I mean, if it's possible, I'm always interested in trying to onsight a route. And of course, the harder, the better. But I've always been especially interested in trying to onsight the old school hard classics. A route that was climbed many years ago, maybe climbed even many times.
Muerte.
Not necessarily climbed many times, but a route that was there for many years and have never been climbed on your first try. In general, these old school hard classics are pretty tough to be onsighted because they're usually vertical, very fingery, sometimes even bouldery, usually kind of climbing that is not very easy to onsight at all. That it's hard to see the holds, hard to see the footholds, and that kind of makes it even more interesting, you know? And definitely it's a kind of climbing where you have to go into some kind of risks. You can't really get all the necessary information from the ground because you're just staring on blank looking wall, and you have to make so many fast decisions right at that moment. Just like here, you're just holding two really bad crimps. You just look around, you can't really see much, and you only see the next hold, and you just have to commit to it and hope that it's good enough. Whew. Hopefully it was good enough, I didn't fall. That was a good relief. But in general, in any kind of onsight climbing, you have to be willing to commit. You have to be willing to go into the move which is low percentage and don't really hesitate for too long. Let's say if I'm onsighting an 8C+, I know that there is not enough margin in terms of power, that I can't really be hanging around for 10 seconds and trying to always find the best possible method. But sometimes I get to the point where my intuition tells me, ooh, you can't really see much, but you see the next hold, and theoretically it could be possible, you know, just to go for it. And if my intuition tells me, well, it's good enough to go there even a little bit dynamically, I just go for it. You can take a look at it that it might be a risk, but only by making all these risks, you actually at least have a chance of doing the route. Because as I said, I don't really have the margin to climb it with too much hesitation, with, in my point of view, too many mistakes. And if I make a certain risks, then I at least have a chance if those risks are gonna work out. Of course, sometimes it means that I fall unexpectedly, even in the easier sequences. But in my point of view, at least for me, I'm not strong enough to climb an 8C+ with too much hesitation. There's always this little bit of risk involved. When I started climbing on this route, Just Do It, which is super famous 8C+, 514C and Smith Rock, it's actually the first 8C+ in USA, first ascended by a French guy, Jean-Baptiste Tribou, in 1992. But it was first bolted by Alan Watts, a local guy, in 1989. And it's really iconic, and it's been a dream of mine to try this route onsight for quite a while. I think I've seen a picture of this route maybe when I was 8 years old for the first time ever. And of course, I was excited. We stayed in Smith Rock for a couple of days. I would get used to this local climbing style. And then I thought this could be the day. Well, I was looking at the weather forecast and it was pretty obvious that it would be cold and windy. maybe perfect conditions to climb in the sun, but not really perfect conditions to climb in this north-facing, super windy wall. Even some of the local guys were, I think, trying to discourage me that these are not really descending conditions. But I was just too excited. You know, I just wanted to give it a try. I just couldn't wait to touch those holds. I was just too curious, and that is the good moment actually, because that reduces the pressure that I always feel before any hard onside or any try in a route which is very important for me in general. I was pretty good because as I was climbing through the lower section, I was not really that nervous, but I could definitely feel that it was pretty cold. And I was constantly struggling with not really numb fingers, but a little cold. Here I'm entering the second hard part of the first section. It's not necessarily super hard, but really low percentage and not really obvious. There's this bad pocket, it's kind of a mono. The next hole looks really far. There's not that many options. Fortunately, I took this mare and committed. Well, the hole was a little worse than I expected. I almost kind of fell off because I was expecting a little better holds. Luckily it worked. And I was in the game. The next section, the next kind of 5 meters of climbing, they're not very hard, but in general, no matter if you're onsighting or red pointing, it's always very important to climb well, even those parts which are not necessarily that hard. Because, of course, it does depend how hard you try in the real crux. But often you just get to the crux just being too tired. Because maybe you have wasted way too much power in the easier section. And I think that's a mistake which many climbers do. That they are not really focused on climbing the easier sections in the best style, in the most efficient style possible. So here I'm approaching the rest, kind of in the middle of the route, after this first part of the route, which by itself could be around AB plus. I was expecting that on this kind of juggy rail I would be able to make a no-hand rest, to release my hands and take almost complete rest. It was obvious that it was not possible. It was pretty much just like a hanging rest. Well, the holds were quite good, the feet were quite good as well, but the fact that I was expecting a no-hand rest got me a little bit out of comfort zone. Well, but then I quickly forgot about it, tried to recover as much as possible, and of course also trying to warm up my fingers as much as possible. In this jog, it was pretty difficult mentally because I was trying to recover as much as possible in my arms and my forearms, while at the same time I knew I had to warm up my fingers because already in the lower section there were some holes that I couldn't really feel properly. But of course, if you're trying to recover your forearms, while at the same time using up my energy to warm up my fingers, then the recovery is maybe not that efficient as it could be. Usually, I never really climb in sweatshirt. I hate it because I feel kind of too heavy when I climb. I was considering taking my sweatshirt off at the bottom of the route, but the brutal wind convinced me that it was not a good idea. But I was planning to take my sweatshirt off in this jug. Then I got there and I was pretty happy that I still had my sweatshirt on, and I was pretty sure that I was not going to take off my sweatshirt off even in this jug, because it was simply just too cold. So after this jug, the wall gets much steeper, but still I was not very worried about the next 5 meters. They looked quite alright. They looked quite alright from the ground, and they looked quite alright already even from this kind of a jug. So in this jug I was more just focusing really on warming up my hands. That was the number one priority. The second priority was recovering. Even though I was pretty happy that with the way I climbed the first section, I didn't get very tired. Of course, the more you can recover, the better it is. And I started climbing slowly again. My fingers were definitely not 100%, but they felt a little warmer than a couple of minutes ago. So it was time to continue. In these kind of routes, which are long, demanding, with some rests in between, it's always pretty difficult to deal with this mental mode, which is like on when you fight, when you have to focus, and then off mode when you get to rest and you need to focus on recovery. So sometimes you leave the rest and you don't really feel like you're ready to give it 100% you have, because only a couple of seconds before you were just hanging in a nice hold and trying to recover as much as possible. In this section I was not really that happy with the way I was climbing, but I was still hoping that I would find another rest a little higher. Fortunately, this section is quite alright, and yes, this hold was pretty much as good as I expected. It was very welcome because I could warm up my fingers, take some more rest to get into the resting mode again. But then it was really important to know to focus on the fact that as soon as I would start climbing from this jug again, I would really be 100% in the zone. Because here the wall gets even steeper, and it was obvious that the business would already start here. And I would have to be 100% ready. The wind was relentless. It just did not want to stop. I just really wanted to recover, but I was just annoyed by the wind. I could ignore the wind only when I was in the hard sections, but I was not really able to ignore it when I was resting in the jugs. From here, it kind of looked that it would be like pretty continuous climbing all the way to the top. And I thought that this would be the very last rest. So I was warming up my hands as much as possible. Last shakeouts. And then I knew I just couldn't make any more mistakes. So, a little scream to motivate myself. This is a kind of a trick that I make for my mind to kind of like get this alert. All right, the rest is coming closely to the end, and now it's time to focus. These two holes are quite alright. Little hesitation, but it was alright. Of course, skipping this quick draw. Here it's getting really crimpy, and the moves are even further longer. This is a hard move. Very small and sharp uncut. This left-hand hole was actually much better than I expected, and I was surprised myself to find another small rest. Which was very good, because I actually thought my fingers were almost numb. And for these small holes it would be much better to warm up my fingers a little more. While I was resting, I was looking up what was above me, and I had some kind of sequence already from the ground. I just wanted to double check if it looks the same like from the ground. I thought yes, and I would make one more shake, and then I thought I would go for it. Well, this right hand hold surprised me quite a bit, because I was definitely expecting a crimp. And it was really weird to finger pocket. I was not really sure which fingers I would put inside. So I retreated, composed myself, and then I knew there's absolutely no more time to waste. And I would go for it. Crux move number 1. Crux move number 2. I was already on the limit. Here it's getting a little easier, but it's continuous, and I feel pumped. It still keeps going. I thought I would just jump into this jug, but then I hesitated a little bit, retreated back. All of a sudden I got really pumped. Sticking this jug felt just surreal. Ah, so good. I mean, I still wasn't at the belay, but I just had a feeling I was not going to fall. I rested a little more. I would take a deep breath. And I knew I had to finish it. It was intense. A dream came true, that was for sure. It was really nice because there was also Alan Watts, the guy who bolted the climb and worked on it. And accordingly, he said that many years ago that he didn't think that somebody would ever onsight this route. And I was pretty happy that I proved him wrong, and I think he was very, very happy too.